On today's episode of Finding Freedom, Wikipedia co-founder Larry Sanger discusses his 9 theses for reforming Wikipedia, which addresses its ideological bias, lack of transparency, and sweeping impact. And the sweeping impact it has on global information, including, of course, chatbots like ChatGPT and Google Gemini. Let's get into the show today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Finding Freedom here on the Lions of Liberty Podcast Network. And you have to excuse my voice today. Still a little bit scratchy, getting over a little cold that I've had. And didn't help me being outside in 30-degree weather for most of the day on Saturday. But it is what it is. And I'm excited for today's show. We're going to be speaking with Larry Sanger, as I talked about at the top of the show. I think a crucially important topic today. I'm talking about really the future of Wikipedia and some recommendations that Larry has. Before we get to introducing Larry, I gotta remind you to pick up some Fox and Sons coffee. Great gift for a friend or family member here leading up to the holidays. You can pick up a bag of coffee or many bags of coffee. Going to foxandsons.com. That's FOXNSONS.com. And you can save 15% on an order of $40 or more by using promo code JOHN, that's JOHN, at checkout. And drink some delicious coffee and support a like-minded fellow entrepreneur. Okay, let's bring Larry on. Larry Sanger, he was a co-founder of Wikipedia, and he's recently released his 9 theses, which is a bold plan to reform Wikipedia and to confront its growing ideological bias. So, Larry, thank you for coming on Finding Freedom.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. And, Wikipedia, it's been around as long as I can remember, almost, in the internet age. It seems like it's kind of always been there. When you Google something, when you search, one of the first things that pops up, at least on an individual and on many topics too, is the Wikipedia page. And you go to it, you read it, and most of the time, you learn something. But more recently, there's been a bias that has crept in. It's been noticeable, especially for people on my side of the fence here. Most of my audience is conservative, libertarian, from that tent, and a lot of what the sources that go into Wikipedia aren't necessarily aligned with the same sources that we're looking at on X or Reddit or wherever on a daily basis. So I want to talk about all that once we get into the meat of this show. But before we do that, I think a good place to start is turn the page back to the founding of Wikipedia. And if you could just share your role in that and what that time was like for you.
Sure. So Jimmy Wales was looking to start a free encyclopedia that would be organized along the same principles as, open source software, and an old website that was around back then called DMOZ, or the Open Directory Project. He thought that we could organize people to contribute as volunteers to a free encyclopedia. And I thought it was a great idea. He invited me to join in order to get this thing started on behalf of bombus.com. So that was his startup at the time that he was partners with a couple of other guys. And so this was just one of the projects that Bombus had taken on. So my role was essentially to get Newpedia started in the first year and organizing, collecting over 2,000 people in that first year. And then the first, to make a long story short, that first attempt was too slow in developing content. So we looked around for other ways to increase the pace of content. And a friend of mine told me about wikis. And immediately, the mental gears were going. How might this possibly be used to make it possible for people to add articles to Newpedia? But then what happened was the people who were organized to work on Newpedia really didn't want to have anything to do with a wiki. And so we launched it under its own domain name, wikipedia.com at first, and then later became .org. And I suppose the rest is history. That's it. I managed the project in the first year after that. So my involvement in the free encyclopedia projects then was a little over 2 years. And it was a little over 1 year working on Wikipedia itself. So I did a lot of the initial organization of the people, and modeling what a good encyclopedia article would be like, and giving people feedback on their articles, and doing a lot of writing of and debating about policies. So things like neutrality and other things.
Because you had a history previous to that with encyclopedia creation, correct?
Encyclopedia of creation? No, can't say.
No, with creating encyclopedias.
I see what you're saying.
Speak like that. Yeah.
The first one that I worked on was Newpedia, in fact.
Okay.
Yeah, I had experience before that in various internet projects.
Okay.
Yeah, throughout the 90s, actually. A
Gotcha.
few different projects of my own.
Is it true that you coined the name Wikipedia?
Yes.
Yes. That's pretty cool. So at what point did you realize that, I guess you were involved, for the first year or so? Is that accurate with
Right.
Wikipedia? So after you left, at what point did you start to realize that, there were some issues with, and we'll get into your 9 theses and kind of dive in depth, but when did you get the hint that things were going in not a good direction?
Well, I could see problems from nearly the start, but those were all problems that I thought that we would solve over time. The reason that I left was that they lost the ability to pay me. So it wasn't making any money. It was intended to be a for-profit, and they were losing money by continuing to have me on. And as a wiki, the thing was practically managing itself, so they were actually able to let me go. But that was like March 2002. By the end of 2002, I wasn't staying on as a volunteer project leader. I didn't want to devalue my professional labor in that way, and I needed to work full time for my living, of course. And I came to the conclusion that a lot of the newer people in the project at the time were driving away a lot of the best contributors, a lot of the academics, and just people who had more sense, I suppose you might say. And it's not quite the same problem that we have, but I think the roots really do go back to that. I think there's a certain kind of person that thrives on Wikipedia, but it's dysfunctional. The reasons why they thrive is that they really enjoy playing the game in a deceptive way, I would say, misrepresenting their intentions and so forth. And yes, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, so when you're speaking of people thriving on Wikipedia, you're talking about the editors who are going and creating.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
of course.
Okay. Gotcha.
Right.
So there's a certain type of person. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm just trying to understand fully what you're saying. Certain type of person that is attracted to doing that. Is that?
Yes. Well, I mean, basically, I could tell right away that some of the people who were getting involved in order to push their point of view.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
We sometimes called them POV pushers, and that was not cool in the first several years, especially before 2005 or 2006 or so. The idea that Wikipedia would be used for partisan purposes was really off the table. But I could tell again from the beginning that, of course, there are going to be some leftists and perhaps some religious people and of various kinds and so forth who would just ignore a commitment to neutrality and really try to push their point of view. It's just not cool. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a big part of the problem.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. It may be younger people, so maybe people under 30 don't realize this, but back in the 90s, the early 2000s, not every single topic was made political. There were many things that people agreed on, and even when there were disagreements, people it didn't come down to I can never speak to you again because you're on the opposite side of this. But yeah, things have definitely escalated in a way where everything has been politicized from sports to movies to everything you can think of has a political angle now at this point in time. So I think it's a different landscape than when Wikipedia was created. So I think you have to kind of, like you've done with these 9 theses, and we'll get into them here shortly. You have to change the foundation of how it's being managed. Would you agree with that?
I would, yeah. I think that's fair to say. I think that, yes, back then it's common for conservatives and liberals to be friends,
Mm-hmm.
to have discussions, often even polite discussions. I mean, genuinely polite
Yeah.
discussions, even friendly discussions sometimes. But at least there was a give and take. There was not an assumption on at least one side, and now more often both sides, that the other side is just corrupt and evil, or you know,
Right.
um, whatever the problem might be. Yes, back then there was a real more good faith going on, I guess you would say.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into these 9 theses, and we'll kind of take them one by one. I'll go through and just read them off first, so everyone can get kind of a overview of what we're going to be talking about here. But and you have a in-depth breakdown of this. So I guess first, where can people find that before we start talking about it?
LarrySanger.org. If you go to the front page, there's a big link that just says 9 theses on Wikipedia. You click on it. The page that you come to is sort of a table of contents. It's got a paragraph about each thesis, and that's not the whole thesis. For the whole thesis, you need to click on the title above each paragraph, and you'll come to a separate essay.
Right on. So here's the 9. End consensus decision making. Enable competing articles. Abolish source blacklists. Revive the original neutrality policy. Repeal, in quotes, ignore all rules. Reveal who Wikipedia's leaders are. Let the public rate articles. End permanent blocking, and adopt a legislative process. So starting out with the first one, end consensus decision making. I'll just kind of ask for each of these Why was it? Why did you include this? And what problem are you looking to solve with it?
Right. So the problem here is that Wikipedia has a certain way of solving controversies over editorial issues. And essentially, what it involves is people debating for a certain amount of time, perhaps sometimes one side just peremptorily declares a view, and this is already settled, and that's what they're saying then. And they often put it in these terms: there is a consensus, and we are expressing the consensus, and you're going against the consensus. Sometimes a consensus has not yet been formed on some particular controversy in the article, and so there is this back and forth. But what happens is, regardless of whether there is a great deal of actual controversy over a topic, once a decision is made, that's called the consensus position, which is nonsense in many cases. So, especially as Wikipedia has, in my opinion, become a lot more biased, especially on the political and social topics, on all the topics of the culture war, essentially, it's become just increasingly ludicrous to call the consensus position expressed by Wikipedia consensus at all. It happens to be the view of Wikipedia. And so it should be called that and not consensus. And that's all I'm saying, really. It's actually a very modest sort of proposal. All I'm asking them to do is to get rid of this description of their process. I'm not even saying that they need to get rid of the process itself or to make any changes, except change the name, because that's just wrong.
Yeah, not an accurate definition of what it actually is. So that one's, I think these are all pretty straightforward.
Yes.
Next one, enable competing articles. As somebody who loves the free market, this one makes good sense to me.
Right. When we started Wikipedia, actually, when we started Newpedia, the decision was made that we were going to have one article per topic, not more than one. And in the end, however, recently, I think it's been obvious that Wikipedia takes a certain position. It writes its articles within a certain sort of intellectual framework, which excludes, frankly, most readers. I mean, there are a lot of people in, let's say, elite circles, if you want to call them that, in liberal Western circles. They will approve of the articles. But everybody else in the world, be they conservative, Christian, often Hindu, Israeli, and many other perspectives, they're just out in the cold. So all I'm saying is, if Wikipedia is now going to take a certain perspective, which is called in the essay here, the GASP perspective. So this is an acronym: globalist, academic, secular, and progressive. So this is meant not to be an epithet, but a description. So there's nothing necessarily wrong with being academic, unless you are so academic that you exclude views that are not popular currently in the academy. Then I think there's a problem. So, and similarly with the rest of it. So those who do not take a GASP perspective should be able to start articles using different frameworks, all, of course, aiming at neutrality, I would say, at least by their own lights, as much as possible within their framework. That's really all it's saying.
So would you propose a cap to the number of competing articles, or just
not necessarily?
Yeah.
There wouldn't be very many topics where the number of articles would become like unmanageable.
Yeah.
And I would also, what I do propose in essay 2 is that we should not have we should not promote an article to the main namespace until it has met certain conditions of quality and support, essentially.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Got to have quality control. So the third essay, abolish source blacklist. This would, I believe, come down to really the bias that's in that certain news sources like MSNBC and The Nation are allowed, and Fox News and the New York Post are prohibited. Is that what this is focused on?
Exactly. So the problem is that on Wikipedia, there is a page listing so-called perennial sources. So if you look on Google or wherever for Wikipedia perennial sources, they will show you dozens and dozens of news sources, mostly, and opinion sources, and they're all color coded. The ones that are green lit, they tend to be very much establishment, often left leaning sources.
Mm-hmm.
The ones that are disfavored, which is basically everything else, they are highlighted in yellow or red or gray. These are harder to use. In the case of red and gray, they're basically impossible to use on Wikipedia. So it's essentially a blacklist. So all I'm saying is this is not reasonable. You can't really claim to be a neutral source and get rid of, frankly, all of conservative sources except for a small handful, maybe two or three, that are essentially establishment rights. What do they call it? The loyal opposition, right? Those that operate within a left establishment Overton window.
Those that are aligned with like the Dick Cheney
Something
worldview.
like that.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the idea is we need to allow other sources, of course, if there are objections from the left or from anyone really to a particular source, then that can and perhaps should be noted down. It really depends on the case. It's all very complicated, right? So I'm not saying just make absolutely anything a source. That's not the point. The point is to be much more open to using a lot of the sources that are now blacklisted.
So I should have asked you on the first two, but a kind of a question that I'll ask going forward on each of these is what feedback have you received on these on this one specifically first, I guess.
Right. Well, as far as the ending decision making by consensus, that one I think people are often misunderstanding me, saying I'm proposing another way of making decisions, which is not the point. But when people understand it, I think they tend to be more inclined to support it. None of these actually have gotten overwhelming support on Wikipedia, which doesn't surprise me. I wasn't expecting them to get a lot of support, but I've been actually pleased in general that they have gotten as much support as they have. I think that there's a lot of honest people still at work on Wikipedia who are essentially putting any sort of scruples they have about working with the ideologues on Wikipedia aside in order to make a good faith contributions on topics of in their areas of specialization, which often are not about political issues or anything like them. So I think, again, the point is I do think there's a lot of people who are secretly or not supportive of these. The other two, enable competing articles and abolish source blacklists. Those two in particular have been some of the most opposed.
Really?
Because yes, Wikipedia does not like the idea of enabling competing articles for the most part. There are some people even there who actually like the idea. But I think a lot of the loudest game players on Wikipedia who are essentially using it to push their causes, whatever they are, or the causes of their paymasters, they don't like the idea of having to compete on the platform with people who have radically different points of view. So, and then as far as the blacklists, that is the number one tool in their belt for shutting down conservative and religious points of view that they dislike, essentially. So they really go to bat for that one.
To be so open with your censorship it's surprising, but I guess it shouldn't be.
Right. It would have been shocking 10 years ago on Wikipedia to read this list and say, is there really a need for these? Some of them, even then, I think the case could have been made. But others, like the idea of a source blacklist, that yes, would have been shocking 10 years ago. It was actually introduced in, I believe it's 2018. So
okay. All right, well, we'll keep moving through these. The fourth essay, revive the original neutrality policy. So what's the targeted solution there?
Well, the solution is simply to return to the original neutrality policy. I'll tell you one way that people have not responded. Nobody, to my knowledge, has responded, we are following the original neutrality policy. They all seem to agree that they have abandoned the original neutrality policy, which is fascinating to me because as recently as about 3 or 4 years ago, they were saying, we haven't abandoned the original neutrality policy. But now it seems to be obvious to all of them. So a good rule of thumb, a way of encapsulating very quickly what neutrality is there is no way to tell what side the writers of the articles take on issues of controversy that come up in the article. All right. So in other words, very briefly, the article doesn't take sides. This, by the way, does not have anything to do with what is called objectivity. It can be very objective or very subjective. That's different from neutrality. Neutrality means not taking a position on issues of controversy, whereas objectivity has more to do with the state of mind of the people working on the article, or the qualities of rationality and being empirically based and things like that evinced in the article, if that makes sense. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about neutrality.
So is that, would that be like inserting their own opinion within the article?
Yeah, definitely. That would be part of it. Generally speaking, when people disagree and something is stated in Wiki Voice that one side of the disagreement is correct, the article says, actually, it does say at one point in the article about me that Sanger incorrectly stated something. I forget what it was, something about COVID, I believe. And it just says it in its own voice, in the article's own voice, what's called Wiki Voice. So they're quite open now about letting the people working on the article speak with their own opinions, essentially.
And we'll talk about this more later, but incredibly dangerous because Wikipedia is such a source input for artificial intelligence. And when
Right.
you're allowing opinions to become facts, it's just a whole, yeah, that's not good.
Agreed. Agreed. Well, I mean, fortunately, LLMs now actually do have a lot more sources. I think they always have more than Wikipedia, but it has to be said that they are very much um, dependent on Wikipedia for certain topics, which is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, continuing through here, number 5, repeal, ignore all rules. So,
Right.
what is ignore all rules, and why does it need repeal? Do you think?
Well, it's ludicrous. Of course, it was meant as a joke. So on February 6th, just a few weeks after the launch of Wikipedia, I wrote this rule, ignore all rules, and it was simply to encourage newcomers. That was the point of the rule. I was saying, if you come to the wiki and you see a bunch of rules and you think you have to learn them, and this makes you nervous and not wanting to participate, then just ignore the rules and go about your business, and it'll all work out. And that was directed again at the newbies. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, at the time we were all newbies, but later it was ossified. That rule was essentially adopted as part of the, I don't know, essential characteristics of Wikipedia, which is again ludicrous. It's now as likely to be used against the newbies as in defense of them, and it's used often by people who are simply pushing their own point of view, and they can't think of any other way to defend it, and so they just say, well, I made this change, and if you have a disagreement on about it due to sourcing or due to some other concern, ignore all rules. This is how it ought to be. So it really serves no good purpose any longer. And
Yeah,
this, out of all of the rules, is the one that is most likely to be implemented. Number 5.
yeah, okay. It's funny that when I hear ignore all rules, you go to anarchy without rulers, without rules,
Yes,
which in a different part of my life, probably 10 years ago, I probably more favored anarchy. But the older I get, the more I realize that we actually we need some rules. We need otherwise it would just be it wouldn't be a pretty scene, I don't think.
that's right.
Okay, moving on to number 6, reveal who Wikipedia's leaders are, which I didn't know this, but I guess we don't know who the leaders are now.
Right. And here I'm not referring to the Wikimedia Foundation or Jimmy Wales. A lot of people know who he is. No, we're talking about the people in the community who are actually editing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
They are not led by the Wikimedia Foundation. In fact, they get very upset if the Wikimedia Foundation steps in and attempts to impose their will, as occasionally they do, or even have to, because of legal cases. So I did a count of the Wikipedia users with the most authority in the system by some objective measures. So they were members of groups called check users, bureaucrats, and they were members of the arbitration committee. And at the time of the count, there were 62 of them. So I call these people the Power 62. And well, I would have you guess, what percentage do you think are anonymous?
All of them.
It's actually 85%.
Okay.
So far more than there should be.
Mm-hmm.
15%, 14.5% of such users revealed a full real name. So I think that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
It's something like 9 out of the 62 that actually uh, indicate something about themselves. I don't know if it's changed since June. Perhaps some of them have been motivated to reveal their identities. I asked them to, but I don't think that we should go in and like dox these people. That's not the
Right.
proposal. The proposal is that in the future, anyone who is added to these groups should have to reveal their identity. And if they're not willing, then they shouldn't have the extra authority that um, these system tools gives them. So,
Yeah, there is a real danger to, like on Twitter, there are so many users who are anonymous users,
mhm,
and like you said, I would never favor a policy where these people are just doxxed, but
mhm,
there's a lack of credibility that comes with not putting your identity behind what you're saying, or in this case, what you're checking, or what you're writing as a um,
mhm.
as each of these inputs into Wikipedia. So I think it's dangerous, and especially going back to AI. Who's to say that it's not AI that is writing these, and if you're not putting a name on it?
Yeah, who knows who's paying them, especially
Yeah.
if they're very powerful. These people actually, because Wikipedia is more powerful than any newspaper or probably than any individual news network.
Hmm.
Well, that's actually saying something. That means that this Power 62 individually have more power at their disposal. Whether they actually use it is another question, but they have more power at their disposal than editors of the New York Times. Oh, we think they should be, you know, operate out in the open and take
Hmm.
real world responsibility. So my concern here is not really so much credibility, which I suppose would be nice. It would certainly help with credibility. It has more to do with the fact that Wikipedia attacks a lot of people with its articles, and there's no recourse.
Mm.
So Wikipedia has, as I sometimes say, it has become an engine of defamation. So if
Yeah.
you have an enemy, if you are important enough to have a Wikipedia article, they can go on the article about you and edit it. And if they can make slander or libel, if it's written, stick in the article, then there's nothing you can do. If they're operating anonymously, you can't sue them. And you can't sue the Wikimedia Foundation because the Wikimedia Foundation is protected by Section 230 immunity. So there's no one
Mm.
to sue. And there are, over the years, I have heard from dozens and dozens, probably well over 100 people who are reasonably famous enough to have Wikipedia articles. And they have complained to me and asked, what I might be able to do to help them solve these problems. And ultimately, there isn't anything that you can do other than essentially pay a PR firm to go in and, probably use some of their fee to pay off people to make things happen on Wikipedia. That actually
That's
works,
crazy.
unfortunately.
It's absolutely insane. I really never thought of it that way, but yeah, it's a license to defame, a license to slander.
Created by the law, by the way. Section 230 immunity
Huh,
is what creates the situation. I should say it's the combination of that and Wikipedia's policies.
crazy.
Mhm.
All right, moving on to number 7. Let the public rate articles. I love this one. I think this should be definitely approved. I would guess though probably the feedback has not been good on this one either.
Yeah, well, actually, the least popular out of all of the theses is the one we just talked about. They
Okay.
really hate the idea of revealing who their leaders are. You know, I guess we might find out that they're working for the Chinese or for Saudi Arabia
Yeah.
or who knows what, right? All right. So Yes, let the public rate articles. The idea is that all these other platforms have ways to allow the public to rate the content on the system. Wikipedia does not. And well, I would like to know why not. If there's one platform on the internet which involves which aggregates public contributions that really needs ratings, it would be Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, people actually, they shouldn't, but they do use Wikipedia for important decisions, right? And so we actually need to know whether the articles individually are any good. And I'll tell you, depending on how such a system were set up, if an individual Wikipedia article were well rated, like if it were well rated by both the left and the right, by both Americans and I don't know, South Koreans and whatever, right? Then I would say, okay, this article is probably pretty good, right? It's rated by a broad cross section of the public. On the other hand, if it looks good, if it's like very long and has a lot of footnotes, but its rating is low, and particularly if it's accused on the platform itself of being biased by people who are not contributing to Wikipedia, then that raises red flags, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It can depend on the rating, of course, but this is all information Wikipedia does not want you to have. And when I say Wikipedia here, I mean the rank and file users. You see, they started a rating system, and they had one between 2010 and 2013. Now, this was mostly for the use of the editors, so they didn't present it to the public as being mainly for the use of the public. I actually think it should be for the use of the public and not the editors first and foremost. In other words, the people who will get the most benefit from the sort of feedback system and rating system that I'm talking about would be the readers.
I think a tricky part with it, though, like just like on Twitter, that I think there's a big problem with bots, paid bots from wherever, Russia, China, who knows where. The US, I'm sure, has armies of paid bots to come in and influence rating these different articles. So would you have thoughts on how to prevent something like that happening?
Sure. I mean, I'm not saying it's a solved problem, but there are known solutions. There are known approaches to that. Obviously, the gold standard is one confirmed person, one vote. So perhaps you could allow some public ratings, but if you wanted your rating to count, then maybe your rating would have to be confirmed with a credit card or something like that, or some other means of identifying who you are. I don't like that idea, right? I mean, it is a potential violation of privacy, and therefore that would have to be handled very carefully. And I have thoughts on how to do that in the article to solve that problem carefully. But I think it's important enough that it's worth giving it a try. And I don't want there to be a bunch of bogus ratings. That is not the proposal at all. And so it wouldn't be an easy sort of problem to solve, precisely because it would require a solution to the problem of one person, one vote. But as long as you're willing to make it required that people reveal their identity to someone, then it actually becomes tractable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's the key piece. And maybe not popular, but I just don't see another way of doing it without some sort of ID verification.
Yeah.
What's been the feedback on this one?
Yes. It's been well, less unpopular than some of the others. I think this is another one that I think Wikipedia might be open to allowing. Right now, the chances of it being implemented are very low. The chances of all of them at this point, except maybe number 5, are low, but it's not as low as like number 6. So
I think it would lead more people to Wikipedia. I mean, people love giving their opinion on things. It would make people. I think it would make people, read more articles. Which in the end, I think that's obviously what it's all about, right? You want people using your product. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's a selling point to get it included, but yeah,
for sure.
definitely something to think about. Okay, number 8. End permanent blocking. So what's this one all about?
Right. So from nearly the beginning of the project, there have been bad actors. And these are people who essentially do whatever they can to gain influence in the project, making friends of other influential people, always being on the right side, whatever it is, etc. And some of those people end up as, they're called, administrators. And they abuse the authority they have to block people from contributing to Wikipedia. A lot of times, the blocks that they give out are what are called indefinite blocks, which means essentially permanent. In effect, they are permanent blocks. They could be unblocked in the future, but they probably won't be, and almost never are, so far anyway. So that's a real problem as far as I'm concerned. Wikipedia needs to stop this habit they have, a very bad habit of issuing indefinite blocks or permanent blocks to trivial behaviors in many cases. And it isn't all simply due to political reasons. It can be, of course. Sometimes a lot of the administrators are, of course, politically on the left, and they are not above blocking conservatives. They won't say it's because they're being conservatives. They'll find an excuse, but it's because they're conservatives, the people who are being blocked. So they do that, but it's not just that, right? There are a lot of people who do perfectly good work. They're not even working on political issues, but they are blocked because, I don't know, they correct the spelling of somebody who didn't want his spelling corrected. And it can be as petty as that sounds. That's not at all unheard of. I've heard of several cases like that.
That's
myself.
Crazy.
Yes.
That's like a psychopathic behavior almost.
It really is.
So what's been the feedback on this one?
This actually is probably the second most popular, I would say. Yeah, there are a lot of people who acknowledge now that the habits of Wikipedia administrators are dysfunctional. They're not good. And sure, like requiring 3 different administrator accounts to agree beforehand on an indefinite block before it's implemented, that's just good sense. I think from almost anybody's point of view. And doesn't require a lot of extra effort out of them, unless they really, really want to have a lot of permanent blocks for trivial reasons. If they want the thing to be essentially lawless, and I think there are a lot of people who are in authority now on Wikipedia who want it to be lawless. They want to be the law. the Judge Dredd of
Right.
Wikipedia.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's not surprising. People that would be attracted to doing this would want that power. But
yeah.
moving on to the last one, number 9, adopt a legislative process. So, what problem does this solve?
Well, since the beginning, there has not been an editor in chief. I was not an editor in chief. I have been called that in sources. That was never a title I took. It was never given to me at the time either. There never has been an editor in chief. There has never been an editorial board of any sort. There has never been any sort of organized power that could be used to start new projects, to approve new projects that are generally under the control of Wikipedia. And so it's just impossible to make sweeping new changes except in a very incremental way. So there have been sweeping changes made on Wikipedia. Like they've essentially gotten rid of the neutrality policy. That's about as big a change as it's possible to make on Wikipedia. But it was done very incrementally. And they still have the language of the neutrality policy. And what cannot be done now at this point is someone simply saying, you know what, we need to return to the original neutrality policy. Let's adopt this language now again, some of the original language or whatever, and perhaps install a new kind of administrator that handles problems with neutrality. Who knows what the policy would be, but it would be great if there were some sort of editorial group that could work through the issues and did so face to face, right? So the idea here is Wikipedia collects like $200 million a year from its mostly corporate donors. At least I think they are. I'm not sure.
Where does that money go to? I mean, to obviously to run Wikipedia, keep everything up. I wouldn't think it would cost that much though to keep it running.
It doesn't cost more than a small fraction of that. So it goes to the staff of the Wikimedia Foundation, whose jobs are, as far as I can tell, let's just say they're not particularly important to running Wikipedia itself. A few of them are. Some of them are engineers, for example. And I suppose there needs to be a figurehead or spokesperson. And of course, there need to be lawyers. So all those people need to be paid.
The lawyers always get paid.
Exactly. Yes, but there's a lot of other people, and they give a lot of the money away to other nonprofits who are basically doing, I would say, in my opinion, activism on Wikipedia itself. Some of it can be positive activism. It can actually be in favor of collecting perfectly legitimate information that is neutral from anybody's point of view. I think some of the money is spent in that way. So I can't really fault that, but I do fault the contributions that are made to basically Democratic Party operatives in many cases.
So essentially, it can become a way. It's like a laundering money almost through these corporations laundering through Wikipedia to fund democratic activist causes.
Yeah, exactly. So, as far as number 9 goes, though, again, I think if there is one person, one vote, then it's much harder for this sort of thing to fly. I can imagine an empowered legislative assembly saying, "Why are you giving money to these people in our name,
Mm-hmm.
right? So yeah.
Yeah. So I guess to zoom out a bit and talk about some, I guess, some larger impacts with these changes and maybe the future of Wikipedia and how it impacts the world. To come back to AI, I know we talked about it going through each of these different um, essays, but just I mean, AI, it's coming to I use AI every single day. I use it for preparing for interviews, for creating clips after my interviews, for researching real estate, for underwriting real estate, for doing all kinds of different things.
Sure.
And a year ago, I wasn't. So it's hard to imagine where I'll be a year from now. But Wikipedia is a big source for all that information, right? And it's just grows larger every day. It grows larger and larger and larger as time passes. More events happen, more important people, more Wikipedia articles. And I would think over time, if a lot of the a lot of the recommendations that you put in place, if they aren't put in place, it's sort of like a compounding effect that we're seeing a lot of these issues just growing and expanding. And then sort of the multiplier I look at it is AI being pumped as a source into AI and then output, into all of these different tools that people use. So what are your thoughts around sort of the way Wikipedia is today, feeding AI as a source, and then how your thesis could be a positive change for that?
Well, there's a few different aspects here. I guess I should pick one. I use AI myself all the time too, several times a day for multiple different purposes. And I actually use it in a way that
Oh, you just froze there, Larry. You still there? You might have lost Larry for a second. Just hang with us, people. If you're watching live, we just just got through talking about so Larry's thesis, 9 essays, recommendations for reforming Wikipedia, and we were just talking about the impact on AI. So hopefully we will get Larry back here soon. And okay, he's left the room, so that's good. That's a first step, and hopefully he's able to come back in here shortly. So just not a lot of time left here today, but I do want to get to AI, and I also want to talk about. We'll ask Larry about whether Wikipedia can be saved, or if an alternative could be needed to replace it. Get his thoughts on that. And if we have time, I want to get into, really what's one thing what's one of the biggest misconceptions about Wikipedia. And along that vein, what's one thing that you wish every Wikipedia user understood? Okay, Larry's back.
I don't know what happened there.
That's fine. That happens. That happens in podcasting, so no problem. Yeah, so it would cut off. I asked the question about AI, and you started talking about maybe 10, 15 seconds, and it froze up.
Okay. As I was saying, there are a lot of different things that I could say here, and actually, it might be better for you to tell me what focus you want to make, because you asked about 3 or 4 different questions.
Yeah, it was a long rambling question. I guess just to target it down, since this show's all about really your recommendations.
Uh-huh.
If they don't implement any of your recommendations,
Uh-huh.
what does the future look like? Are we seeing a negative impact from where Wikipedia will continue to go on the input, the source input into AI?
I think that if Wikipedia implements my my reform proposals, basically, if they were to reform all of them, Wikipedia would be entirely rejuvenated. It would become a behemoth. It would grow far more than it has, probably by an order of magnitude, if for no other reason than that they would start using primary sources. That's one of the things that I ask in relation to thesis 3. And as a result, AI would benefit. I mean, clearly, the sorts of information that you would get from Wikipedia mediated by AI would just be higher quality for sure. And if Wikipedia does not, then the problem is AI is, as has been proven by Grokpedia, my own tests, other tests from other people that I have seen, we can expect that within a few years, I mean, already Grokpedia is good enough for people to use it rather than Wikipedia. A few people, some people, right? But within a year, who knows? It might be, as large as Wikipedia or larger. The actual amount of information in it might be more than Wikipedia. And because they aren't quite so fastidious about what sources they use, the actual sheer amount of information in Grokpedia could be much greater. Wikipedia, you'd say that it's growing and growing, and it stopped growing nearly so fast a long time ago.
Okay.
Like it took like over a decade to go from 5 million articles to 8 million articles or whatever it is now. Long time. And that's by design. The people who are involved in Wikipedia, for whatever reason, they don't actually like having a lot of new articles. I think they're just being jerks, if you ask me. I think they're being fools. Like that's anti-intellectual, is what it is.
Yeah.
And if I were in charge of an AI encyclopedia system, or Wikipedia for that matter, I'd just open up the doors and have articles about not everything, of course, but a lot more things. That's for sure. There's all kinds of ways in which a properly programmed LLM can make articles on all sorts of things that you wouldn't even think to make articles about. Every single product in the store can have its own encyclopedia article. Every single street on the planet could have an article. It would be interesting to a lot of people, but if it were well programmed, the information would be as reliable as the information on, say, Google Maps, which is okay. We take it for what it is. We know it can contain mistakes. Google Maps, I mean.
Yeah.
Right? So the same thing would be true of these automatically produced articles. And if we're talking about that many, then we're actually talking, of course, about tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of topics. Why the hell not? That's the way I see it.
Yeah. It's the age of information. Why not niche down to, like you said, every single street in the United States have a wiki on it? Why not?
Well, and more than that, actually, I think of some, particular topics in my academic specializations. This is not about epistemology or early modern philosophy. This is about ethics. But I'll bet if I go to Wikipedia and I look up ethical intuitionism, I'm looking at an article right now by P.F. Strawson about ethical intuitionism. And if you'll bear with me, I'm going to do a quick search
Sure.
on intuitionism, Wikipedia. Let's see if they've got an article. Okay, they do. Okay, I was ready to say that they don't. All right, so that's good. They've got that at least. But you just drill down a little bit more, right? And they won't have the article.
Mm-hmm.
So they wouldn't have a particular article about Sidgwick's ethical intuitionism, right? And they could, right?
Yeah.
In fact, there's whole books written about that by Sidgwick and other people. So why not? Is what I'm saying.
So in your point of view, the danger for Wikipedia is not necessarily kind of the way I framed it as being a poor source, maybe not a reliable source for AI. It's really just Wikipedia becoming irrelevant.
Well, that's the danger from their point of view.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, one of the main reasons why Wikipedia became the monster that it is today is that it was much larger than any other encyclopedia or any other reference source in history, really. So it was the long tail of topics that were served that made Wikipedia so useful to so many people. Now we can have a lot more articles, and I see no reason to think that a Grokpedia or whatever the case may be, that ultimately does have that many more articles, that actually goes into detail, that simply gives more information, will not ultimately do much more and better than Wikipedia.
So running out of time here, but one more question for you. What from your perspective, what is one major misconception that the ordinary person has about Wikipedia? Could be how it's functions, or it could be, you could take this from a bunch of different directions.
Yeah. Okay. That's nothing immediately comes to mind. I think a lot of people have learned recently just how biased it is. You know, occasionally you'll come across people who are entirely restricted to a liberal framework themselves, that they live in a bubble, and so they've never heard of that. That would be one thing. Let me think. I actually think a lot of people don't realize that Wikipedia editors, like none of them, are paid by Wikipedia. It's entirely 100% volunteer. Okay, here's one. Yeah, this is actually important and timely and worth saying. So a lot of people do not realize that the people who are working on Wikipedia are being paid by somebody else. So that's a fact. You can prove that that's a fact. I don't know what percentage. I'm not making any claims about that. But what I am saying is that it's a big business, right? Like multi-million, maybe billion-dollar business. A lot of money exchanges hands to make sure that Wikipedia articles read a certain way.
Which makes sense, the amount of influence that it has. Yeah,
yes, of course. I mean, there's a lot of corporations that they are trying to place their technology, whatever, in the forefront. There's a lot of governments that are pushing a certain point of view on issues of importance to them, and they're surely not too scrupulous to pay somebody to go and do the work, and of course misrepresent who they are. It's very easy on Wikipedia. You can lie up the as much as you want about yourself. Some people actually have been caught in lies about themselves. There's a lot more people who have not been caught. Or you can simply say nothing at all about yourself, and yet you are in fact working for some PR firm, or for Microsoft, or the Chinese, or whatever, the CIA, right?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. It's really a rabbit hole. Once you start down the Wikipedia rabbit hole, I think there's lots of maybe nefarious actors potentially involved. But okay,
Yeah.
so last question or not really a question, but a plug for you. Where can people, once again, where can they read this document? Can they get involved in some way? Can they help out? Is there a way for them to do that?
Sure. So you can read it on larrysanger.org. Again, just go to the top of the front page, click on 9 Theses. It's right there. If you want to see the copy on Wikipedia, it is, to the best of my knowledge, the same. It was the same in the beginning. There's a link to it down just below the introductory section. What I would encourage people to do is to weigh in and express your support on the project for the 9 Theses. This is especially important if you have an older account. And one thing that I've been encouraging people to do, and I think it'd be a great idea, and that is to just go on Wikipedia and, do battle in the lists, essentially. Actually go and try to make Wikipedia articles a little more reasonable. Like it or not, even now, even today, Wikipedia matters. It is used by a lot of people. I have been told, I don't know if it's true, but I have been told that in any given month, 1 billion people use Wikipedia, right? Which is a lot. So it's got a lot of influence. So it actually matters what Wikipedia articles say. And one of the reasons why it is dominated by the left is the left loves to go in and take over institutions. That's like what they do. It's of sacramental importance to them. It's almost like a religious right for them, is what I'm saying. And the right, if you're conservative or maybe especially libertarian, it's like you just wash your hands of things as soon as it looks like you're losing. You don't want to have anything to do with it. And what happens? Well, it's taken over by the left, and they go right on having influence over the public, because another thing that they do, of course, is to make it look as if their radical views are actually reasonable, and that the views of everyone, when of course they're not in any way at all.
Yeah.
So, right. So, and at least what I've been encouraging people to do, try that out at least for like a season of the next several months, this winter, say. All right, make a commitment to go in if you're inclined to go in. You, maybe your friends, it's a lot easier if you've got somebody who can back you up, right? And try to make some changes. If we have more people who are working on Wikipedia who are now currently frozen out of Wikipedia, we actually make it easier for good people to get involved.
Yeah. So, I think that's a really interesting idea, and especially talking about, do it with your friends, maybe create a community around it, doing it together. I think that's
well, unfortunately, they've closed off the exits to a great extent. So if you do that sort of thing, I'm not encouraging people to do that, but it would have to be done the way that the left does it, namely secretly. Otherwise, you can all be blocked for what's called meat puppetry.
Meat
So,
puppetry.
meat puppetry. It's not like sock puppetry. So a sock puppet is an account that is controlled by another person, like a sock puppet, right? That is chiming in support of the main account. You see what I'm saying? So a meat puppet is I don't know why they decided to call it that, but it's just basically coordination behind the scenes off Wikipedia in a way that cannot be traced by others. Or maybe it can, but the point is it's off Wikipedia. And there's a website that does this, Wikipediocracy. Used to actually be anti-Wikipedia and critical of Wikipedia, and that too was taken over by Wikipedia insiders and used now as a back channel to shore up their own influence on Wikipedia.
Okay, so don't be a meat puppet. Don't do that. Don't take my advice there.
Let's just say that if you do, you'll be blocked unless you are careful.
Yeah. Well, Larry, this has been an awesome conversation. I really do appreciate it. I think the listeners have certainly learned a lot today, have a lot to think about, and I hope they go to your website and read everything for themselves and share it and help to get the word out. So I want to thank you once again for your time today.
Well, thank you.
All righty. Okay, that is it. That's my interview with Larry Sanger, and I think I can speak for myself. I learned a lot today, so I'm assuming the listeners out there, you all did as well. As always, if you like this show, Finding Freedom, if you like our network and all the shows we have here at Lions of Liberty, please do subscribe, either if it's on your audio podcast platform, your favorite podcast platform, or YouTube or Rumble. Just be sure to be subscribed. Hit that notification bell on YouTube to make sure you know when we come out with new content. And if you really like us, please do look at supporting us on Patreon or Locals. And with all of that being said, I will see you all next week. But first, have a great Thanksgiving. But then next week, I'll see you next week with another great interview. In the meantime, always remember to keep your head up and those fires of liberty burning.